Hello my friends, welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you are new. Hello everybody, welcome back to another video. Today's video I have some recommendations for you. I have 10 books on this list that I think are amazing, wonderful, cozy, comforting romances. We have some historical, some contemporary, some fantasy, and while I think that cozy is something that can be left up to interpretation from different people's points of view and perspective, the thing that I noticed most about these books on this list is that while they have some types of heavy content in the books, they're not without like heavy content. It doesn't dwell there necessarily. So, and I think specifically in these books, the romance itself is extremely cozy. Like, these are men who are so sweet and so kind and would probably be very effective on any type of cinnamon roll hero list, but reading these just gives you a warm hug, and the problems that they have in here are relatively easily solved, at least in my opinion. Again, your mileage may vary, so let's go ahead and get into it. The first book that I want to talk about is actually the one that I most recently read, and it is Savor by Tarah DeWitt. So this is a contemporary romance set in a small town, and it is absolutely charming, and the romance in here is so sweet and really, really beautiful, where the hero is pretty much gone from the heroine from the get-go. So this is basically about our hero, who is a very famous chef. He had a Michelin star. It's been taken away. He's had some falling out with his work, and he finds himself sort of really feeling burned out in his career and has lost some momentum with his career, and he doesn't really know where to go from here. He is also grieving the loss of his sister, and he is now raising his niece, his teenage niece. He gets an opportunity to go to this small town to start a restaurant basically there, and he's hoping that this will get him his reputation back. So he moves to the small town, and that's where he meets our heroine, who is a very sweet, charming, funny, great heroine. She is so wholesome and sweet, and you just can't help but love her. She ends up collecting rescue animals, so she lives in the small town, and she has a Clydesdale horse, some geese, a giant Irish wolfhound dog. Like, she is an animal lover, and I think that's very endearing for sure. And they have a little bit of a run-in their first night. Their meet cute is very funny, and they have a series of interactions with one another. They decide to enter into a friends with benefits relationship, basically because they have such great connection and chemistry. While he is maintaining that he's going to leave, he's not going to stay here, so it can't be anything more, of course, right? And she is in need of somebody to help her be her partner in this competition that is part of the center of the town. And she also is hoping that he can pose as her boyfriend to make her ex kind of see that she has moved on and she's got a good man now. So there's a lot of stuff happening in this plot, and that makes it a very compelling read. And I do think that if you really love a man who is so sweet and is so gone for the woman and just head over heels for her and treats her like a queen, like, most of these books are going to be for you, but especially this one. So the romance was very sweet. The small town vibes in this book are fantastic. I love the found family element. I think that this really handles the relationships well, and it was just a very, very fun read and very comforting and very cozy. Okay, the next one is Secret Love by Willow Aster. So this is her series of contemporary romances with single dads. They're all single dads on a football team, and it is called the Single Dads Playbook. I don't know if they're on the same football team or if they're on different football teams. I don't know if that's important, but they're all football players, and they have varying levels of fame, and they're in different timelines in their career. This is book 2 in the series. You don't need to read this in order. They're interconnected standalones. I think this whole series overwhelmingly is cozy, but the first book definitely has some heavier content, so I picked this one. And we have our hero, who is a divorced single dad. He has 3 daughters, and he's trying to do his best by them. He has an amicable relationship with his ex-wife, and he really loved her, so he sort of accepted the fact that he isn't going to feel love for anyone. He's not even sure if he wants to have any type of physical connection with anybody, like a one-night stand or anything. And that all changes when he meets our heroine in a coffee shop by chance one day, and they have a very powerful meet cute. They feel sparks, they feel a connection, that feeling of this person is something else, I want to get to know them, and then she kind of slips away and he goes on with his life. She is starting out as a substitute teacher at one of his daughter's school, and he doesn't realize that that is who she is. So his daughter ends up having a run-in with a teacher who has said some things that are unkind, so he goes to confront the teacher, and instead of the teacher being there, it is the substitute teacher who he met, was attracted to, felt a connection with, and he kind of reams her out, and she's like, whoa, buddy. I'm not actually the teacher, I'm the substitute here. And then they end up he ends up apologizing. She says, I think your daughter may have a learning disability. I can help tutor her. And then they're kind of thrown into forced proximity there. Their relationship does end up needing to be secret because of the girls, that she was the teacher. They're really not sure how they're going to react to that. So there is an element in here of slow building chemistry and keeping it a secret, so there's a good amount of tension in here. But this book was just so sweet, so wholesome. And this, again, is a hero who head over heels for the woman, loves her pretty much from the get-go, will do anything for her, and shows that to her through the whole book. So this one was so comforting and so cozy. So now this next one is a little bit of a favorite of mine for the year. It is Sunlight by Devney Perry. I absolutely love this book. This is book 2 in her new small town romance series, which is set in Montana, I believe, at their family ranch. So our heroine is very down on her luck. She has recently taken on a job as manager of this ranch in Montana. She is financially struggling, and she goes grocery shopping one night, doesn't have a car, is trying to use the shopping cart to get back to her dive apartment because she doesn't want to carry everything that far. And she kind of is in a bit of a tussle with the grocery store employee. She's like, I just need the grocery cart for a minute. And the grocery store employee is like, heck no, you don't. Back off. And here comes our hero, Jax, who is determined to put this at ease. He sees this woman. He wants to be a knight in shining armor and help her. And he's also, you know, she's beautiful. He's attracted to her. And he ends up working it out so she can get her groceries back to her house. She's very grateful for this, and then as soon as he introduces himself and tells her his name, she immediately recognizes it as the name of the owner of the ranch. He's not technically the owner, but he is family there. So whatever chemistry they were feeling, whatever interest they had in a relationship, she immediately puts the brakes on because she's like, whoa, I need this job. You're one of the bosses. I can't mess this up. But of course, their chemistry, the sparks, can't be denied for long. They end up having a one-night stand, and she ends up becoming pregnant. So this is an accidental pregnancy book. And then the rest of the book is them trying to work out and decide if a relationship between the two of them will work, if they can work through some of their own issues, mostly the heroine, because the hero, again, golden retriever, cinnamon roll hero, will do anything for the woman, gone from her from the get-go. One of my favorite parts of this book is reading his point of view because he is just so enamored with her, and it's just a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing to read and see, and I loved it so much. So this was fabulous. This was cozy. This was romantic. Great small town feel. And the heavy content in here didn't feel super heavy because we didn't dwell on it in those moments. So this one is very cozy and I highly recommend it. Okay, the next one is a cozy fantasy romance called The Spellshop. This one is very popular. You've probably seen it going around. I read this book in the fall and I was so charmed by this. I feel like if you're looking for something that is romantic, that is fun, that has great characters, that has some magical side characters and creatures and fantasy elements, I think you would really, really love this. I had a great time reading this and it was giving me everything cozy that I wanted in the best possible way. And I typically am not a huge fan of cozy fantasy because I like my stakes to be high and I want it to feel like they're high. But this book just really, really charmed me, and I think it was a combination of the characters, the sentient spider plant, and just the cozy atmosphere of the whole thing. I really also liked the writing style. So in this we have our librarian heroine who ends up escaping this library because there was a fire there. There's a revolution uprising. She takes her sentient spider plant and whatever books she can carry, and she ends up escaping to an island where she was raised as a kid where she thought she would never return to. Now, when she goes out there, she ends up meeting a man who is kind of a little bit of a handyman in the area. She's not ready for love. She's not wanting to fall in love, but she can't escape this connection the two of them feel. She is, however, kind of keeping a secret because she is using her magic. Magic isn't entirely looked upon with a favorable eye at the time, and she decides that she is going to use her magic to make a jam to make a living for herself. So pretty soon her cottage is overrun with these flowering plants, raspberry bushes, and she's making this jam. And things come to a head when people start to find out that she's using her magic to do that. So this was so fun. I loved this book a lot, and it is definitely cozy. The plot is not the strongest element here. This is definitely one where the characters and the vibes and the side plot won me over. Okay, so now this next one is a historical romance, and it is How to Marry a Marquis by Julia Quinn. I absolutely love Julia Quinn, and I think that for the most part, all of her books, not all, most of her books feel very cozy for me and very comforting. And this one was recommended by one of my patrons, Jennifer, and I absolutely loved it, and it became an instant comfort read, one that I will definitely be revisiting because it was so cute and romantic and just fun. And I think one of the elements that makes a book really work as a cozy romance is the banter. If it feels like really good conversation in a way that feels warm and cozy and like these are people that I know or that I recognize, like I think that's a really good element of what makes a cozy romance work for me personally, and this one definitely did. So this book is basically about our heroine whose parents have passed away, and she is now trying to find a way to support her siblings, her younger siblings. She's working as basically a companion to Lady Danbury at the time, and she realizes that she can't have this job forever. This is not enough to support her siblings. And so she decides what she has to do is marry a viscount or a marquis. She needs to marry a man for his title because she needs that security and that income. So she finds a book in the library of Lady Danbury's home one day which has instructions for how to marry a marquis, and she goes about putting them into action. She tries to keep this book secret. Lady Danbury's nephew ends up coming to town, staying there with her, and our heroine doesn't realize, however, that he is Lady Danbury's nephew. He kind of keeps that secret and just says that he's basically a caretaker. So they have a friendship. He ends up realizing the book that she is reading is How to Marry a Marquis, and he's like, why don't you practice on me and we'll get you ready to meet this man who's going to save your family financially. And they fall in love, and it's very beautiful. I love Julia Quinn's writing style. I think that she is just so fun and charming and just a great afternoon escape to read this. Okay, so now this next book is The Autumn Bride, which is another historical romance that I really, really love. So this one is basically about two sisters who are orphaned again. They are in some pretty dire circumstances, and they're living in an orphanage, and they end up becoming friends with two other sisters who are kind of on the verge of being put into very unfavorable circumstances to try and survive. So our heroine is deciding that, you know, she doesn't want her sister to get involved in that. She doesn't want these other two girls to get involved in that. So she's trying to think of a way to rescue them. They escape. They see this giant manor house on the way with one light that looks like maybe there aren't servants in there. So our heroine has the idea, let's go in there and see if we can find anything valuable that we can maybe steal and sell and try to make a living. And so they go ahead and do that. And they end up being caught by the lady who lives there, and they form a friendship. So instead of this lady, this elderly lady who is really not doing well, is not being well cared for at all, the servants are kind of using her just for her money, and they're not taking good care of her. And our heroine sees this, she knows that, and she is determined now that she entered into this place wanting to, you know, take what she could find and use it for her own good. And now she feels like she wants to protect this lady, and this lady allows the children to come in, the girls to come in and raise them, and it's just so lovely and wholesome. And the romance is, again, when our heroine ends up meeting the lady's nephew, and she says, oh, these are my nieces, and he's like, what? No, they're not. So he's trying to prove that they are not the nieces. Meanwhile, the two of them are falling in love. So the shining star of this is the found family element and the relationship with the elderly woman, and it is so beautiful. The romance was great too, but this one is definitely more about the sisters and the family for me. Okay, so now this next one is Seeking Persephone. This is such a sweet, comforting romance. This is actually going to be made into a movie. I'm very excited about that. This is another historical romance where we have our heroine who needs to marry a wealthy man, and lo and behold, the Duke, who is scarred and damaged, offers a lot of money for her hand, and so she accepts. She accepts, her family accepts, and she goes to live with him, essentially. And they do not get off on the right foot right away. He's very cold. She continues to try and make advances to get to know him, to be friends with him, to try and build a relationship, and he rejects her over and over and over again, to the point where she's about ready to give up on him. But something happens where he has to come and rescue her, and he realizes that he may lose her, and that maybe this whole time when he's been rejecting her, he should have just been like welcoming her with open arms. So this is a really beautiful and sweet romance, and I just love this dynamic. If you really like a scarred Duke hero who's very cold, who takes a while to warm up to the heroine, I think you would love this one for sure. Okay, this next one is a contemporary romance called Only for the Weak, and this one is so cozy, even though it is not like, I think most of the time when we think of cozy books, we think of like fall type of settings. This one is in the summer at a tropical island. It is a destination wedding. Our heroine is not only the sister of the bride, so she is a bridesmaid herself, but she is also the ex-girlfriend of the groom. So things are a little bit tense there, and she's not necessarily feeling sad that she missed out on that boyfriend, but she's sort of trying to find her place in the world, and she's not sure she wants love anymore. She's not really sure what is going on with her life. Now, the best man comes into town, and he is so smitten with her and wants her so badly, and he does everything in his power to win her over. So this is one of those books where the hero is obsessed with her in the best way possible, is over the moon, head over heels for her, and uses extravagant means to prove and show that to her. So it was just very, very charming watching him pursue her. I am always a fan of women getting treated like queens, and this was just absolutely beautiful and so charming and just a great romance for sure. Okay, the next one is Soft Flannel Hank, which I think is a very perfect cozy read, mostly because of how soft and tender this hero is. There are some things that are happening in the background plot that are kind of dangerous. There are vampires in this book. This is a paranormal romance, but it's like light paranormal romance. So this is essentially if Charlie Swan got his HEA. So his name is Hank Dove in this book, and he is kind of exactly what you think he is. His daughter, his only daughter, is moved up and grown away with, you know, vampires, of course. He doesn't really approve. He is a divorced single dad. He is in therapy. He is a soft hero. He is a plus-size hero. He is really kind of down on himself, a little bit of self-loathing, doesn't see much about himself that he has to offer, but he's working on it. He ends up having a chance meeting with a witch who has come to town to escape some vampires who are after her. They have a one-night stand, they have a great connection, and he falls head over heels for her. Head over heels for her. Now this romance does have a little bit of back and forth in the are they going to get together, are they not? But this fills everything that I want for a cozy read for me, and I think that's specifically because of how much this hero really loves and worships the heroine. So I love this book so much. It's one of my favorite romances, and if you haven't read it, please put this on your list. Okay, and then the last book that I want to talk about is A Holiday by Gaslight by Mathews. This is technically a Christmas romance, so right now we are approaching the time where if you haven't read this book, now is the time to read it. It is so freaking beautiful. It's a very short novella. It is based on this. The author has said this is her love letter to North and South, the BBC production, which is one of my favorite shows ever. I love it so much. It is so achingly romantic, and this has all of the feels of that in a book form. So we have our heroine who is basically engaged to be married to Mr. Edward Sharp, who is a merchant in the town, and he is very cold, very aloof, and our heroine feels like she can't even imagine spending her life with him because she doesn't even think that he likes her at all. He's so distant and so cold, and she just cannot even bear the idea of being married to someone who doesn't have any feelings for her. Unbeknownst to her, he actually does feel for her very, very deeply. He just doesn't have a great way of showing it. So she decides she's going to end things, but then she has this idea that maybe that wasn't the best thing and maybe she kind of didn't give him enough credit. So she's going to have one last chance where they can have a connection, and it's going to be by inviting him to Christmas. So this is very cozy, very charming, very heartwarming. Honestly, this is, I think, one of the best historical romances I've read and one of the best Christmas historical romances I've read. I've read this twice every Christmas in the last 2 years, and I'm definitely going to be reading it again this year. I look forward to it so much. It's one of my favorite books, and it is the epitome of a cozy romance. There you have it. Those are 10 recommendations for you if you were looking for something cozy, heartwarming, where the hero is nothing but a king and a golden retriever to the heroine. These are the books for you. I hope you all enjoyed this video. Please let me know what your favorite cozy romance is down below. And if you have made it this far, please leave me a red heart as an emoji to let me know you were here. And I'll see you all in my next video.